Ottawa.
This has been a challenging time for our community throughout the coronavirus pandemic. So much has changed in the way we function, the way we communicate, the way we operate as a city. There are very important decisions to be made at city government about the response to the pandemic and more. So we wanted to provide an opportunity for elected officials to connect directly with their constituents and for you to hear from them. Welcome to Ward Updates, a series of one-on-one conversations with Ottawa City Councillors. We will talk about issues arising from the crisis, issues that directly affect you, your families, and your neighbors. We will share the stories of people throughout the city who have been rising to the occasion under these unusual circumstances. And we'll also talk about other important issues that are on the agenda right now at Ottawa City Hall. My guest today is Shawn Menard, the City Councillor for Ward 17, Capital Ward. Shawn, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me.
First of all, how are you doing? How is your family doing? Tell me a bit about how you've been adapting to these unusual times.
It's been a whole new world. I'm not at City Hall office, really. I'm only in there very rarely. I've been working from home. My partner, Johanna, has been home as well. With the kids. She was always meant to be home with our littlest one, Hazel, but Cohen, our older one, he's 4.5 now, has also been home with us. So it's been, a challenging time, but really we feel very lucky that Joe was going to be off, with the kids in that time. She's been working very hard with them. But for me, it's just been nonstop. We have a lot more work that would normally not be taking place because of COVID-19, and people are at home now too, so those challenges have picked up, and everyone's seeing their neighborhood and they have lots of issues they want to raise. So we have a lot of extra work on our plate, and there was been no kind of break at all that you'd normally see. So we've been really going nonstop, and it's been necessary to do that sort of thing during this time. And I think the city hasn't really slowed down with frontline services, meanwhile addressing pandemic issues.
What are some of those issues that you're hearing about from your constituents? Tell me a bit about the requests that you're hearing related to the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of requests very early on around, our streets and travel and how people, whether they felt comfortable or not on our streets. And so people were requesting a lot more space that would traditionally be, reserved for vehicular traffic. People were walking to get groceries, or if they were driving to get groceries, when they got there, they wanted to make sure that they had the space to kind of line up and observe physical distancing. So, some of the challenges for us has been to try to make changes where we can on our streetscape to allow for that room. So we have been doing that. We saw some changes to the Bank Street Bridge as a beginning, with the outer lanes opened up to pedestrians and cyclists and people that wanted to get around. And we also did work very heavily with the NCC and Mr. Nussbaum to get the QED opened up for people that wanted to exercise. Our pathways were packed when all this started happening in April. Runners and people that were just wanting to walk really wanted more space. So we did work collectively with them to get that done. And in other cases, it's been a challenge. I've been trying to do it more often on other areas of Bank Street, and of course balancing that with business needs and what they're telling us. So it's been a challenge in some cases to do that as well. Other issues, of course, Brewer Assessment Center is in my ward. And so that was the first assessment center to open in Ottawa. And so I worked with residents to make sure they understood what this meant. We have the closure of our rink there as a result, and people have been more than welcoming of having folks come here who want to get tested. And I've been working heavily with the Ottawa Hospital and Ottawa Public Health to make sure that that's been a smooth operation, and it has been. They've been doing a fantastic job here, but there's been other things that have happened as a result. Maybe one last challenge I'll mention, Mark, just is around things like libraries and our typical services. So the library in my ward, Sunnyside, is still not open because of staffing issues and COVID, and making sure that we've got enough libraries staffed up. But that's certainly an issue for some folks in my ward, and I'm working now with city staff to see if we can open it on a part-time basis in the meantime.
What are your concerns and observations as we move into a new phase with the fall approaching? We're going to see people wanting to be indoors a lot more as they gather, in cases where they do gather. Kids are going back to school, of course, and other changes are happening. So what do you think we need to do as we manage our way through that? We've seen infection rates come down, but also go back up in some cases as things have been reopened. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
I think it's important to keep being vigilant, certainly, but at the same time, we also need to make sure that we're reaching out to our neighbors. And I guess, I've been trying to kind of phone through my contact list because there's a lot of mental health challenges out there, and there's harm that's being caused as a result of us taking the actions that have had to be taken to reduce the spread. And so those harms manifest themselves through mental health issues predominantly. So I've been really focused on that and making sure that, seniors isolation, which is already an issue, particularly in my ward, but other wards as well. We've been trying to reach out to make sure that those opportunities are there. It's been a bit, I think, easier that it's been summertime, it's been warm. My real concern is it gets cold, we're back inside, as you say, and more isolation tends to occur in the winter, and seasonal affective disorder and other ailments come up. So, my focus is really going to be on trying to make sure that our mental health is strong, and that we're reaching out to our neighbors to combat some of the harms that are being done as a result of the restrictions that have been put in place.
Let's talk about transportation for a moment, because I know as everybody, as some things start to go back to normal, I know not everybody's going to go back to work in a downtown office. Federal public servants, for example, are not. But we're going to see parents driving their kids to school in many cases because they don't want them on school buses. We are going to see some people returning to work. What are your thoughts on the implications of all of that on traffic, on congestion, and on public transit, since we've seen a dramatic decline in use of public transit? Is that going to continue for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I've been seeing it in two ways. A lot of people are not in their downtown offices, so the traffic that you normally see coming through Capitol Ward and in through the downtown to get to federal offices has not been occurring nearly as much, and so that traffic's been down. In other cases, traffic's right back where it was before the pandemic in certain neighborhoods. Depends where you are. Certainly in mine, it's down. With the return of school and return of work for many people as well, come the fall, in terms of in-home or at the office, we're going to see an uptake. So I've been trying to mitigate it by looking at things like bike racks at Hopewell and our parks. We don't have those in place as much as we should right now. So I've been working with Hopewell School, for example, with 860 kids to get more bike racks there. You have to give other options for people to get to these places without taking their car or taking the bus, which they may not be as comfortable with. So it's providing those options, doing the small things, and encouraging people to really take active transportation if they can, rather than driving their car. We already see pileups in past years near schools, and it's been a dangerous situation in some cases. I think that's going to be exasperated. A lot of people don't want to be taking the school bus. So that's a challenge. In terms of transit, we've got our work cut out for us to make sure people know that we have put in place safety guidelines. There is better protocols that have put in place there now. I think it is safe to take transit, and that we've got to make sure that people are aware of that and feeling comfortable again to do that. And that's on us. I also think we got to incentivize that sort of thing. We still have very high fares in Ottawa. The LRT still is, to be desired in terms of some of the functionality there. So there's some part that we've got to really do to make sure people do feel comfortable and confident getting back on transit, or else we will see that congestion pick up, and it's not going to be pretty in the depths of winter.
Yeah, let's talk more about what some of the long-term implications of that are, because as you say, it's a tough battle to get people to use public transit in the first place. And now the habit has kind of been taken away from them, and there are people who are not traveling much, but when they do now, they're using their cars, and they may be reluctant to get on public transit in the future for risk of infection. And let's acknowledge that the light rail system has not been a success so far in the first year. So what does all of that add up to in terms of long-term implications?
I mean, to me, it means that we need to start taking on a new urbanism here in Ottawa. And that means in suburban, urban, and rural areas, different modes of transportation. We cannot just simply rely on, vehicles to get us everywhere in terms of the roads we have. It's extremely costly. And it doesn't make sense for economic output. We really need to be thinking about how our streets are organized in order to adjust to, I think, what will be long-term implications. And so that doesn't mean building a bunch of new roads to accommodate what could be an increase in traffic. That will just lead to more traffic if we do that. It means reforming our streets. And so we've been seeing this been done around the world. Where we still have traffic going through, but there's a separated, segregated bike lane added, or there's expanded sidewalks. We've taken some initiatives just by putting pylons up and saying this is safe to go here now. When the winter comes, it'll be a bit more challenging, but we've seen cycling pick up. I suspect we'll see more winter cycling as an example and more people walking. So we have to accommodate that in a city such as ours. I do, the cost that we spend on new roads now is not really sustainable over the long term, because every time we build a new $50-60 million road, like in Strandherd in Barrhaven, we're also increasing our cost of operating it every year and the repairs that need to be done to it. So as we expand these roads, we're really not doing great for city finances, and we need to take care of the roads we have, fix the potholes we have, and implement new ways of getting around the city that, scooters have just been implemented as well. And though they can be a nuisance for some people on either going on the sidewalk or other areas, they have seen a huge uptake. So it's technology like that I think we also need to be looking at in the long term.
Now, speaking of the city's finances, you're being left with a bit of a shortfall, to say the least, because transit ridership has gone down, OC Transpo revenues are down, there are other shortfalls, other extra costs, those kinds of things. So some of that's going to be covered by provincial and federal infusions of money, but the city will be left with a shortfall. Do you believe that means that that the city should increase taxes beyond what the mayor promised, a cap of 3% tax increases?
I think at this point we have to have all options on the table. We shouldn't just say we're sticking to this just because we said that 2 years ago on a promise that can't necessarily be fulfilled when things happen. And it's not that I want to see taxes go up in that way. It's that we need to make sure we have a sustainable city with the services that we're offering. And so in this case, we're in some cases, we're spending a lot more because we need to make sure we're offering, physical distancing to folks. We're not taking in funds from community centers, for example. There's a whole bunch of different areas that are affected with our finances. So I don't want to take anything off the table at this point. I don't think we should just be saying that we're going to make a bunch of cuts when those could affect people during this pandemic because we want to keep an arbitrary number focused. I do think we need to make sure we're looking at all options at this point. There is some funds coming in from the provincial and federal government. There certainly should be a look at some of the services that we were offering and whether we need to continue with those. And I can tell you, Mark, there's a couple projects in my ward that I'm saying, okay, we'll delay those for a year or two so that we don't have that operation or capital investment that would have come this year in order to make sure we're, reducing our costs. So, there's some, I can name a few projects in my ward that aren't going to be going ahead this year. We're going to delay them. And I said, we all have to chip in and do that. So that's another method of making sure we're keeping taxes reasonable, but also adjusting to the new reality we've got.
Can you share some examples of people who have been rising to the occasion in your ward? Throughout the city, we know there have been all kinds of heroic actions by people during this crisis. Maybe just tell me a bit about what you've witnessed.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I can mention is just the people at the COVID assessment center at Brewer. I had a chance to go there very early on before it was open, and then afterwards visited. They are doing incredible work there. Our nurses in the city are working nonstop. That includes nurses and doctors and folks that are part of that assessment center. So I feel very, very lucky, and quite frankly, working with people like Kate Eggins there, working on city staff, our city staff folks like Dan Chenier at the Parks Department. They have been doing an incredible job working nonstop to keep services up while also serving people that are in need. So that COVID assessment center and the people that work there, I think I'm very thankful for them and the close relationship that we have. I see every day what they're doing. So I think that'd be my number one right now, is in terms of just recognizing folks that have stepped up during this time. And of course, the grocery workers in my ward as well, every ward, but they've been resilient through all of this, and who would have thought, right, that our grocery clerks would be kind of frontline, necessary, mandatory workers at this point, but that's where we're at, and they've been incredible as well. So every time I'm in there, I thank them, but certainly that the COVID assessment center, they've been very, very forthright in their mission, and have really delivered for residents in Ottawa. And of course, our medical officer of health and everyone at Ottawa Public Health, they have been working nonstop. They do take vacation where needed, because that's healthy. But I got to tell you, I've personally seen incredible actions by them to make sure that people are informed, and that they've got the right information in front of them to make decisions for their families.
All right, switching topics, I wanted to talk about policing in Ottawa and the discussion that's being held throughout North America as a result of some events in the United States in particular, but some revelations in Canada as well, the Black Lives Matter movement, and the discussion around defunding police. What does defunding the police mean to you? Because it's become a bit of a politically charged word, that word defund. Does it mean dismantling police departments entirely, or does it mean continuing to have some sort of law enforcement budget, but streaming some of the money away towards social services like mental health resources and others, things that the police have somehow ended up being tasked with responding to when it might not be the most effective use of their time?
Yeah, and so it certainly can mean different things to different people. For me, I've been trying to make clear that I support a reallocation of resources. If you want to call it defunding, we call it defunding towards mental health services, to situations where police officers don't want to be there in the first place, or mental health calls where there's other services in other jurisdictions that respond very well to those sorts of requests for service. And we need to be looking at programs like Cahoots that they have in Oregon, where they've got a frontline mental health team that can respond to calls. They've now taken, I think it's over 17% of calls in that area on from that would normally go to police. And so I've been clear, but that needs to happen. We do need to see a reallocation. And I think it's important to recognize the police budget in Ottawa has been the fastest growing budget over the last 2 decades. We've seen a tripling of that budget to over $360 million now since 2001. So we've seen it tripled since that time. And I think it's a healthy conversation to pause and say, could we be doing better here? What are the outcomes that we're getting? What kind of oversight do we have of our policing? I've been seeing stories the last 3 months that I'm shocked at coming out in the media of, certainly individuals within the OPS, but it's concerning. And I'm not seeing a lot of, vigilance, actual reform there to say we need better oversight and civilian oversight. And so those are other challenging conversations that are not just they're kind of outside that defunding conversation, but they're related to it. And I hope that we can, as a city council, the police board, and within the province, start to really think about how we police our communities, what's effective and what's not, and value for money.
But you're not saying let's get rid of law enforcement entirely. You're saying let's reallocate some of the budget for the police service to other resources. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's what I've been calling for. As a first step, we need to be looking at a reallocation of some resources where we know the evidence shows that there's better folks to respond to those in a safer situation, and that will better serve those people that are in need at this time. Professionals in the health community that can better serve those individuals. That's as a first step what we need to see here in Ottawa.
Can you give us an update on your relationship with the Glebe BIA? Because that sort of came to a head at a certain point, and they wanted to remove you from the board, and there was some very public discussion about that. So where do things stand now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the board. I've been a member of the board since after I was elected, and that hasn't changed, despite what I think was a very negative conversation around it, and a quite bizarre conversation. I think at the end of the day, they were responding to some of my. I'm an advocate for my residents. I work hard for them, and I did that in two different issues that they took issue with. One was around Lansdowne Park and public space there, and the way that the city operates at Lansdowne, which I think is very effective, and they took issue with the way I organized there, and I think they also took issue with when I was trying to get more space for people on Bank Street during COVID-19. We were looking at removing 19 parking spots on Bank Street to allow for more distancing and allow more active transportation. Some of our conversation earlier on today, Mark. So they've since reversed that decision that they took as a board. I think they took that in camera, and I wasn't present at that time, but they've reversed that. There was a lot of backlash at the time when that happened, and it wasn't very clear why that was occurring, and not just, even though you may disagree with somebody, sometimes healthy debate and criticism is welcome on boards and should take place. So that's since been reversed. I certainly have my view of the way a city should operate, and I think that would help businesses if we could implement some of those ideas, but that's not always the same opinion that's shared with everybody. And so in this case, that opinion wasn't shared. So I guess it was a bit bizarre, and I think probably meant to tarnish a reputation more than anything, which is strange, but that's I think where it was aimed. And at the end of the day, I've committed to working with them directly, as I always have been, very, very responsive to any requests they have. I'm committed to doing that some more, and also working with the board on new collaborative initiatives going forward. So I'm hoping that we have a good relationship moving forward with some ideas we can try out, and work with businesses in our community, small businesses in particular on Bank Street, who I've been visiting, and making sure they've got the support they need.
I wanted to ask you to give us your perspective on your first couple of years at City Hall in the context of what we just talked about, because I think there are a couple of ways that people could look at this. One is, as you just described it, that you fight hard on behalf of your constituents, that you have strong opinions, that you advocate for things, and so sometimes that might ruffle some feathers, or there might be some people who don't agree with you, who want to silence you. Another way to look at it might be that you need to learn to get along better with other people. I think you've been perceived as being a bit of a thorn in the mayor's side at times, and there have been words that have been exchanged on social media. So what's your perspective on all of that? How should your constituents look at this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should look at it in what we've accomplished together, right? At the end of the day, we've got results from not just accepting what has been a status quo for a long time and pushing in some areas where we need to push. And so I think you can look at the record that we've put together. My focus on council has really been around three main areas. One is around accountability, around the LRT and developer influence in particular. The second is around sustainability and making sure that, in terms of our environment, street safety, our finances, I'm a big advocate around sustainability, and then leading a vision towards new urbanism and community-based organizing. That's really how I came in the election, and it's what I've been focused on. And so we've gotten things done together. We pushed hard on LRT accountability, ended up passing a motion. It was the Watson Menard motion on getting options on the table for moving towards a system that functions, the release of previously secret documents, and making sure that we have a move towards an options analysis of what if we don't stay in this contract. And so I think we're moving in those directions because of a big push that had to take place, and there was results as a result of it. It's the same with the climate emergency that I passed early on in the term. We had to push hard for that, and I worked with Chair Moffat of the Environment Committee as vice chair. I worked with him and other councillors, though they may not all agree with it. There's a need to move towards sustainability in this city and start to adapt to what we know will be a changing climate. And I think we accomplished the goal there and need to see some more investment and eventually financial savings from that. So that wouldn't have happened without a big push to take place. And then locally in the ward, for a long time, people wanted things like a return of the Muchmore rink, and it wasn't being pushed as hard as it could be, I think, at the council level. So I pushed that hard when I came in, and we got that rink back, holding a snow clearing forum and pushing hard with all the urban wards to say, look, we need a reevaluation of the maintenance quality standards. We've seen that now. We're getting those updated, ensuring that things like street safety around Bronson Avenue, we've seen results as a result. So I think pushing has its place, and constructive criticism is a good thing as long as it doesn't become personal. Unfortunately, it has become personal in some cases, but I haven't been a wallflower. I've been pushing for change with the status quo, and people will have to evaluate the results that we've been getting here in the ward. Right. And I also know that I have lessons to learn too about making sure that, in some cases, being more collaborative and less pushy also gets results. And so there's been some cases where we've had to do that, and I respect that approach as well. So I hope that the results we've achieved do show that there is a necessity sometimes to challenge, and that councils and boards are better when there is constructive criticism.
All right, we have less than a minute left, but just a quick question for you, and I know it's a big area, but you touched on light rail and accountability. Are you confident that going forward, our light rail system is going to operate effectively? Are we at a point where we can express confidence about that or not?
I noticed that they do have the required trains out on the track now after a year of service. I'm concerned there's going to be winter issues again. I'll just be open and honest with you about that. My concern there is that we're not going to have flawless winter service, and I think that there still needs to be a look at that full contract. So I'm hoping, and I think there's been some improvements certainly, but the proof will be this winter, and we have to wait to see when that happens.
All right. Shawn Menard, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Take care.
Shawn Menard, the City Councillor for Capital Ward, Ward 17. That concludes our ward update. Thank you for watching.